Good morning. Thank you to Liz for the generous invitation to be here. I'm actually in a state of ecstatic delight at the moment. I had the privilege of studying at Pacifica Graduate Institute in the middle 2000s, and I did not know that Martina was going to be here, and that's where she studied. And so I've just realised that there's this extraordinary connection across oceans which has occurred. I am so deeply grateful for the notion of dream being brought into the space by you, because in fact my journey to Pacifica was also instigated by a dream. So I thank you for bringing that in. My name is Lisa Schouw. I'm very blessed that I can still remember that. I currently work, I'm a working artist. I work as a singer and songwriter, a theatre maker. I am a clinical psychotherapist, and I'm also a teacher. I am currently what my grandmother would have called a late blooming academic. My interest at the moment is in the investigation of what I believe is a rich and potentially enlivening experience, which is ageing. I'm also interested in the tyranny of ageism and the accompanying narrative of decline that we are currently inhabiting. I use an arts-based research practice. I've just lost track of technology. What do I do? Oh, good, look at that. Okay, beautiful. And the project at the heart of my research is a theatrical work called Somewhere Between Hello and Goodbye. It is a collaboration between a group of women who are all highly accomplished artists. We are investigating memory, grief, loss, attachment, fear, joy, potential. And we've been gathering together for the last 12 months working on this creative project, which is still in its infancy. The research that I'm going to share with you today is located in the tangle of threads, that is theatre and performance studies, gerontology, and post-Jungian psychology. The spine of my work, or what American choreographer calls the statement you make to yourself, outlining your questions, is based on 3 inquiries. The first, I have gathered lived experiences of a group of older women, all aged over 60. I'm exploring how might an interpretation of these lived experiences through the medium of performance disrupt our society's current master narrative of decline, and what might be revealed about the potentialities of ageing in the 21st century by an analysis of this collaborative process undertaken by elder artists. In the opening lines of his book, Practices Research in the Arts, Robert Nelson writes that people engage in research from a variety of motives, but ultimately a desire to establish new insights drives the rigors of academic research. I rather like the idea of thoughtfulness, a minding, a heeding, a caring attunement, a wondering about the project of life, of living, and what it means to actually live a life. Last week, I crossed the threshold of my 61st year, and as I experienced more deeply the changes that are arising not only in my body, but in my memories and in my spirit, and in the changing interactions that I'm having with the outside world because of my age, I am turning my attention to gaining a deeper understanding of what is causing this. Somewhere Between Hello and Goodbye is the result of a thoughtful practice by 4 elder artists ranging in age from 60, now 61, to 62. And so before I go any further, I'd like to introduce you to my beloved friends and fellow collaborators. The lady on the right is Anke Frankenhauser. She is 71. She is a contemporary dancer, and you will all have the joy, I hope, of seeing a part of her solo work at the Portrait Gallery on Friday late afternoon. Chrissy Coltai, the cheeky one, is on the left. She is 70. She's a choreographer, a dancer, also a clinical psychotherapist, and she is an extraordinary painter. Jenny West is an actress. She's 82, and she is the head of voice at Actor Centre Australia in Sydney. The other day, Jenny and I were sharing a cup of tea, and we estimated that between the four of our lifetimes, we have been working and creating for nearly 300 years. Somewhere between hello and goodbye is an embodied outcome of research. We've been meeting for nearly a year in various rehearsal spaces in the inner west of Sydney, in the heart of a metropolitan space. We've also taken a trip to Currarong, just on the south coast, and danced in the Pilgrim Hall there. We've been interweaving a bricolage of memories, myth, spoken word, image, movement and song. Our work together is an act of poesis. It is an evocation of bringing forth a poeticizing of aging. Before I go any deeper into this paper, I'd like to share with you some archival video footage from our rehearsal process and our recent showing at the Rex Theatre in Sydney. It will give you a tiny taste of some of our process. If you look very closely, you might catch a glimpse of the archetype of the female triad, three fates caught in the act of creating a world. You might see two women in the thrall of childhood memory, where their mother's kitchen was a place to dream of adventures on the high seas. You might also see a fleeting image of an older woman in a wedding dress caught in ecstatic love. Hope this works. Thank you. My specific desire to do this research is in the service of expanding our understanding of what storyteller and Jungian analyst Dr. Clarissa Pencola Estes more poetically refers to as eldering. In a recording of her masterwork, How to Be an Elder, she asks, what makes an elder? Heartfelt spirit? Clear mind? Talented heart? Is it formulas, schemas, lexicons? It could be, but also, and often more so, I think it is very like the flowering of the trees in the forest. As we gather more years, we straggle and stride onward in our better learned ways to give out even more seeds for new life and to blossom wildly in so doing for self and others. The dangerous old woman in her many likenesses calls you to get down to business. This mention of the dangerous old woman as crone, trickster, wise woman and goddess introduces an essential element of my research, that of the archetype. One of Carl Jung's most succinct and direct thoughts on the creative process can be found in his book, The Spirit in Man, Art and Literature, in which he writes that the creative process, as far as we are able to follow it at all, consists in the unconscious activation of an archetypal image and in elaborating and shaping this image into a finished work. In April 2017, when I was in the early stages of my research, I had the unexpected opportunity to attend a music concert at the State Theatre in Sydney, where I witnessed a powerful embodiment of the dangerous old woman. American poet and songwriter Patti Smith inhabited a stage dominated by an image of her younger self, taken from the cover of her album Horses, which she recorded when she was 29. At 70, Patti was making her final Australian tour. She strutted, gyrated, laughed, challenged, and even occasionally stood still, not despite her age, but because of it. Makeup free, with long, grey, flowing hair and the occasional use of expletives and reading glasses, Smith commanded our attention because of her history. She gave a performance described by Maria Israel as the kind of visceral performance in which Smith's lust for life is palpable, as though she is imbued with the energy of all her loved ones who have made premature departures. Her performance ignited both a stirring and a painful realization that I had begun to relinquish my own passion for music and theatre making, and indeed life itself, by buying into notions of ageing that denied me the right to continue to perform simply because I was too old. My presence at Smith's concert proved to be a challenge to my own notions of ageing. Smith's parting words were yelled to the audience. Some folks are 70 years old. So I am, motherfuckers. Her words demand our attention. She will not go gentle into that good night. Ageing ultimately leads to death, and perhaps it is this inevitable relationship that makes any discussion of the ageing process at the very least uncomfortable, and more often than not, threatening. In her profoundly moving book, Old Age, Simone de Beauvoir argues that society wrongly looks upon old age as a kind of shameful secret that it is unseemly to mention. Going even further than the notion of shame, Beauvoir suggests that old age brings an apparent biological alteration in classification. She writes, society appears to think that they belong to an entirely different species. For if all that is needed to feel that one has done one's duty by them is to grant them a wretched pittance, then they have neither the same needs nor the same feelings as others. Despite the considerable literature about ageing that fills both the digital realm and the more dust-prone library shelves around the world, Beauvoir's words from almost 50 years ago still reverberate loudly in our modern world but the language of anti-aging is pervasive. Aging is a lifelong developmental experience which can vary greatly between individuals. The transition towards inhabiting a new internal meaning as we age can be a very gentle process for some and a far more troubled and turbulent one for others. In order to reflect this diversity, I have interwoven three main methods of inquiry. The first is a series of one-on-one interviews that I'm in the process of still doing between a group of women aged between 60 and 103. I specifically choose women because their experience of aging is different to their male counterparts, and because I have chosen to be both outside and inside my research, as witness, collaborator, and at times one of the objects, I speak to that which I know. I ask these elders a number of intimate questions, such as what do they most regret, what surprises them about aging, something they didn't expect, what brings them joy, and what are they most afraid of. All through the interview process, I have been in the company of a group of extraordinary women who are courageous, wise, often very funny, and always generous with their joys and their fears. I just wanted to pause to acknowledge the emotionality and mobility of tears that have already been in the room this morning. That willingness and grace to show vulnerability is, I'm very grateful for, and these women demonstrate the same quality. The second part of my research is a creative practice. As I mentioned earlier, I've been working with two dancers who have embodied history in all that they do. They are equal parts exacting, incisive, focused, playful, inquisitive, and often very disruptive. Our rehearsals consist of talking about our own lives, sharing the stories from interviews, exploring the imagery of archetypes and mythology, and then taking our aging bodies onto the floor to begin crafting our work. We explored what was possible and what was not, and we were often surprised by what appeared because of apparent impediments. The third stage in my inquiry is public performances. As gerontologist Jean Cohen suggests, aging offers a great scientific opportunity for exploration. I suggest that performance provides an unparalleled space for individuals and communities to explore different interpretations of the so-called crisis of aging and the discriminatory behaviours of ageism. Here, the landscape becomes one of potentiality and possibility rather than loss and discrimination. In the theatre, timing is everything. A moment of forgetfulness during rehearsal can provide both a glimpse of approaching fragility as well as a reminder of how years of performance experience develops flexibility and an ability to improvise under pressure. One day in rehearsals, as Anka and Chrissy were improvising choreography, I saw Chrissy move very enthusiastically to the floor, only to discover that she couldn't get up. Immediately, Anka moved towards her, and together the pair created a series of movements that enabled Chrissy to rise seemingly effortlessly from the floor. This act of invention is an exemplar of their capacity to collaborate, to respond, and to problem solve when they have encountered an obstacle. There are tensions between that which moves towards us from the world and that which we experience from within. Rehearsal processes are actions of doing and redoing that allow us a unique opportunity to investigate experience. In the company of these elders, I have witnessed surprising beauty, heartbreaking vulnerability, strength, quickness of mind, bawdiness, and curiosity, all navigated through the expertise of their artistic practice. I want to leave you with a a comment from an audience member who was responding in a post-performance Q&A session after our first showing at the Rex Theatre in Sydney in November. What was incredibly special about the piece was it was 4 older female artists performing, sharing stories together, which is rare in our culture. And they did it with a delicate grace that can only come from lived experience. They had nothing to prove. They were just unashamedly themselves as lifelong artists. It sort of lulled you into their world. Lots of delicate meditations on loss, grief, change, and moving forward. It's not often you get to see something with such quiet grace. Thank you.